Three men walk out of a Philadelphia prison on a Tuesday afternoon in 2026, blinking in the sunlight they hadn't seen in 28 years. The reason they spent nearly 3 decades behind bars for a crime they didn't commit. A witness who lied on the stand. And in courtrooms across America right now, it's happening again. Welcome to the verdict room, where we examine the cases that expose the darkest flaw in our justice system. When people swear to tell the truth, then destroy innocent lives by lying under oath. Perjury. It sounds like a simple crime. A witness lies in court, gets caught, goes to jail. But the reality is far more devastating. False testimony doesn't just send the wrong person to prison, it lets the actual perpetrator walk free. It destroys families. It creates cascading injustices that can take decades to unravel. And worst of all, perjury often goes unpunished. Prosecutors rarely pursue charges against witnesses who lied, even when the truth emerges later. But 2026 is bringing these cases back into the spotlight, and the stories are shocking. Let's start with one of the most significant exonerations in recent memory. Three men, Antonio Robinson, Anthony Wright, and Danny Corley, were convicted in Philadelphia for a 1998 murder they didn't commit. For 28 years, they sat in prison. The conviction rested heavily on witness testimony. Testimony that was, quite simply, false. The Innocence Project took on their case, and through meticulous investigation and DNA evidence, proved conclusively that these men were innocent. In 2024, they were exonerated. By 2026, the question has shifted. Where is the accountability? Where is the criminal case against the witnesses who lied and sent 3 innocent men to spend their entire prime years behind bars? This is what the Innocence Project has been documenting for decades. Out of every 100 exonerations they've secured, roughly 70% involved false or misleading witness testimony. Let me repeat that. 7 out of 10 wrongful convictions involved lies under oath. Think about that statistic. It's not DNA contamination. It's not forensic misinterpretation. It's people standing in a witness box, placing their hand on a Bible, and deliberately lying to put someone in prison. Some do it for money. Some do it out of fear. And some do it because they genuinely misremember. But the effect is identical. An innocent person loses their freedom. Now let's look at another devastating case that just received a massive settlement in Kansas City. A former daycare worker spent 5 years in prison for a crime she didn't commit. Her conviction was based entirely on the testimony of young children at the daycare, whose memories were shaped by leading questions, suggestions from authority figures, and the power of suggestion. When her conviction was finally overturned, she didn't just walk free, she walked into a legal battle for compensation. Because Kansas, like many states, had to change how it handles witness testimony from young children. The daycare worker was eventually awarded thousands of dollars, but money doesn't give back 5 years of her life. 5 years of missing her own family. 5 years of being labeled a child abuser in a society that shows no mercy to people convicted of crimes against children, even when those convictions are false. But here's where it gets even more complicated. How do we distinguish between perjury and honest misidentification? Between deliberate lies and false memories? This is the legal grey area where real injustices thrive. A witness might be genuinely convinced they saw the defendant commit a crime, even if they're completely wrong. Studies show that eyewitness testimony, one of the most powerful tools prosecutors have, is also unreliable. People misidentify suspects, especially across racial lines. They misremember details. They influence each other's memories without realizing it. And yet juries trust eyewitness testimony at rates far above its actual reliability. Let's jump to 2024 in Las Vegas, where detectives finally solved a cold case murder from the year 2000. A man had been strangled with a phone cord inside his home, and the case went nowhere for 20 years. But with modern DNA genealogy, a technique where law enforcement uploads DNA to genealogy databases and traces family connections, they identified the killer and made an arrest. The case highlights something crucial. Sometimes, perjury cases only get exposed when new technology allows us to investigate further. The original witnesses in that Las Vegas case might have lied. They might have been wrong. We'll likely never know. But the DNA doesn't lie. DNA is indifferent to witness testimony. It simply reveals the truth. Which brings us to the psychological dimension of false testimony. Here's the uncomfortable truth that criminal psychologists have documented. Liars in court aren't always easy to spot. We have certain stereotypes. The liar sweats, can't make eye contact, fidgets. But research shows that many accomplished liars appear completely calm and credible. They have what psychologists call conviction in their false narrative. They've told themselves the story so many times they believe it. A witness might genuinely believe they saw the defendant, not because of any deliberate deception, but because of false memories that have crystallized over time. And a jury, watching this credible-seeming witness testify with apparent conviction, convicts an innocent person. Let's examine a more recent case that shows how far perjury can reach. In 2026, we're still grappling with the fallout from cases tried decades earlier, where witnesses lied and evidence was hidden. The legal system has no statute of limitations for perjury in many jurisdictions, which means theoretically, a witness who lied in a 1990s trial could still be prosecuted today. But prosecutors rarely pursue these cases. Why? Because it requires admitting their own office's failures. It requires saying, "We won a conviction based on lies and we didn't catch it." It's politically unpopular. It makes the criminal justice system look bad. So most lying witnesses never face consequences. But there are exceptions. There are prosecutors and defense attorneys who have dedicated their careers to going back and pursuing perjury cases after exonerations. Each case is a battle. The witness has had 20 or 30 years to disappear, move away, build a new life. Memories fade, documents get lost, and the statute of limitations in some jurisdictions has already run out. Even when prosecutors want to pursue a perjury charge, they're often blocked by technicalities. Was the testimony material to the verdict? Could the defendant have been convicted even without that specific testimony? The bar for prosecuting perjury is surprisingly high. One of the most stunning recent developments has been the rise of the Innocence Project's focus, not just on exoneration, but on post-exoneration accountability. They're documenting every case where false testimony led to wrongful conviction. They're building databases. They're pushing prosecutors to file charges. And in some cases, they're succeeding. In 2026, we're seeing the beginning of a shift. A willingness to hold liars accountable, but it's glacially slow. For every witness prosecuted for perjury, there are dozens more who face nothing. The emotional toll on the exonerees is staggering. Imagine being released from prison after 28 years, like Antonio Robinson, Anthony Wright, and Danny Corley. You've lost your youth, you've lost your career, your relationships, your place in society. And the person whose lie put you there, they might be living freely somewhere, completely unpunished. Some exonerees have pursued civil lawsuits against false witnesses, but civil litigation is expensive and emotionally draining, and it rarely results in meaningful compensation. A jury in a civil case might award damages, but a false witness often doesn't have resources to pay. Here's what makes perjury cases so insidious. They expose the fundamental vulnerability of our legal system. We've built a justice system that depends on the truthfulness of witnesses. We have no mechanism to verify what someone says under oath other than cross-examination and the possibility of impeachment with contradictory evidence. A prepared liar, a convincing liar, or even a mistaken witness who sincerely believes their false narrative can poison an entire trial. And once a jury has convicted based on that testimony, reversing it becomes extraordinarily difficult. This is why the Innocence Project's work matters so much in 2026. They're not just exonerating people, they're systematically exposing the weaknesses in how we prosecute crime and handle witness testimony. They're documenting patterns, and they're building a case for reform. Many states have begun implementing better procedures for eyewitness identification. Double-blind lineups, where the officer conducting the lineup doesn't know who the suspect is. Sequential presentations, where witnesses view suspects one at a time instead of all together. Video recording of witness interviews. These reforms don't eliminate false testimony, but they reduce the likelihood of innocent people being convicted based on mistaken eyewitness accounts. But here's the sobering reality as we head further into 2026. For every case that gets exonerated, hundreds more likely remain undetected. Innocent people are probably sitting in prison right now, convicted largely on perjured testimony, and nobody has yet found a way to prove it. Their cases don't make national headlines. They don't attract pro bono lawyers from the Innocence Project. They just serve their time, their lawyers exhausted their appeals, and the system moves on. That's the hidden tragedy of perjury in our courts. So what's the solution? Prosecutors need to be incentivized to pursue perjury charges. Some legal reformers have proposed mandatory investigation into witness credibility before trial, using methods like polygraph testing. Though polygraphs aren't foolproof and remain controversial, others advocate for harsher penalties for perjury to deter lying under oath. But here's the dark truth: you can't deter something that often doesn't get punished. If a witness lies and gets away with it, penalties don't matter. And most lying witnesses do get away with it. The real reform has to be structural. It has to involve better training for juries about eyewitness reliability. It has to involve better cross-examination tactics by defense attorneys. It has to involve transparency from prosecutors about witness credibility issues. And it has to involve a cultural shift where we stop treating exonerations as anomalies and start treating them as symptoms of a system that needs fundamental change. As we stand here in July 2026, the stories of Antonio Robinson, Anthony Wright, and Danny Corley, freed after 28 years in Philadelphia, are the most visible reminder of what happens when people lie under oath. They got their freedom back, they got public recognition. But thousands of others haven't been as fortunate, and the witnesses who lied, most of them are still out there, unpunished, living normal lives. This is the dark underbelly of our justice system. It's not as dramatic as a DNA exoneration based on forensic breakthroughs, but it might be more important, because perjury, false testimony, reveals that our entire system depends on a premise that often fails: that people will tell the truth under oath. When they don't, innocent people suffer. And when we fail to hold liars accountable, we're complicit in that suffering. What do you think? Should there be harsher penalties for perjury? Should prosecutors be required to investigate witness credibility more thoroughly before trial? Should exonerees have a legal right to sue the witnesses whose lies destroyed their lives? Drop your verdict in the comments below. And if you want to see more cases that expose the flaws in our justice system, hit subscribe. We're here at the Verdict Room, examining the cases that matter, the verdicts that shock, and the truths that change everything. Thanks for watching.